This is the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose, where I strategize with business owners on how to grow and scale their businesses to hit their income goals. This is episode 144 of the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose. Today, I have an interview with Anna, who is going to be talking about the financial planning steps that you need to take, not only for your personal, but also for your business. And I really feel like this is such a conversation that we need to have. There are so many money mindset blocks that we all have that we need to work through. It's a conversation that we as women should be having as business owners. And you don't want to wait until it's too late to be able to start seeing that you're profiting your business and you're saving for things that you want to be able to have in the future, as well as a financial plan for your future as far as for retirement. So you're going to hear me talk in this interview a little bit about Anna's challenge that she is running. There will be a link to the show notes, so make sure that you hop over to sign up for that. So let's dive into this interview. All right. I am super excited about this podcast interview today. I am here with Anna. Anna, how are you?
Good morning, Jenny. I'm great. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you. I am so excited to get to talk to you about finances and budgeting and all these things that we need to be worried about when it comes to our money. But before we really dive in deep, can you introduce yourself and a little bit about your business?
Yes, totally. I'm excited about this conversation because that's what I do all day long, every day. So I'm a certified financial planner by training. And I sort of say that I've accidentally became a financial planner because my intention, all my childhood and, my young adult life was to become a doctor. And I, somewhere along the way, I had in my college years, I switched majors. So just got really intrigued by the business. And but when I graduated from college, I had no idea what to do with my business degree with finance concentration. But what I did know is that I was in trouble with my finances. I had student loans, I had accumulated credit card debt, and I had no skills whatsoever as a young adult how to kind of get myself together. But I did learn about this career in one of my investment classes that I took for part of my major. And that's kind of how it piqued my interest. So it was really self-serving to begin with. But I did, I kind of connected that idea of me wanting to work with people as a doctor, right? And then now I get to do that. I have done it for the last 15 years as a financial planner. And I find that, money topics are even more intricate and are even, I think they're even more important in some instances. And I love the idea of helping people. My business is quite unique of what you see out there in the space of financial services. We are what's known a fee-only, project-based financial planning firm. What that means for our consumer is that it doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter what your resources are, income, assets, you should be able to get qualified advice. And so we tailor to clients like that. We don't have asset minimums, income minimums, anything like that. We work virtually. We kind of have presence on both coasts, East Coast and West Coast, but all of our clients are spread out across the country, actually even across the world. And we do a lot of online meetings all day long.
Well, I understand that very well because that's how all of my clients are virtual based too. So a lot of the listeners are probably clients that I've worked with the same exact way that we do it. So I think that this is such an interesting conversation, and it's often one that I don't think we talk enough about. I think a lot of women, we have a tendency to shy away from wanting to talk about money. We feel like we shouldn't be. We might have grown up being told of ways to handle our money when it may not have exactly been the best path for us or for our journey as far as finances. So one of the things for me is the very first thing I think I hired out, and I did it in the midst of tears, was a bookkeeper, because money is not something that I enjoy to have to work with numbers. Do you feel that there's a mindset you need to have when it actually comes to your money?
I do. And I like to call that money set is this. I like everybody to kind of think about this notion about money. Money is a tool that should be used to help you get whatever it is you want, help you get the freedom you want, help you grow your businesses, help you provide for your families, help you achieve your goals. So think of it as a tool. And I know that a lot of people have those kind of feelings like, I don't like to deal with numbers and all of that. Honestly, when I was growing up in my career, I'm not a big fan of numbers either. So as a financial planner, I have to know how that works. And but I like the idea of personal touch, one-on-one interactions with clients. That's why I love doing this. But numbers are important part of doing business, important part of doing a financial plan, and they're an important part of our overall finances. So I think if you start viewing it that way, and it's a bit of just a mindset shift, then it becomes just easier. And then you start looking for resources. This is one idea that I think is also important to remember, is that you don't have to do it all. Right? You can, like you did, you can hire out for those things that you don't like, whether it's in your business or your personal life. But you still have to know the basics. And I'm a big advocate for having really strong basic foundation for your personal finances. That was the piece that was missing for me when I was younger. But once I had my hands on it, things changed, right? So again, to be smart with your finances, you don't have to become a financial planner, but you've got to master a couple of basic things and use money as that tool to get you what you want.
When you're saying the basic things, the foundation, what is it that you're talking about that are some of the first things that you really need to get under control and understand in order to take control of your finances?
Yes. Well, for one is you really need to understand where your money is coming from, right? What kind of income? It may be pretty straightforward, but I'll tell you, a lot of people don't even look into the intricate details of that. If you're getting a W-2 income or a paycheck, understand what kind of deductions you have. Are you paying enough taxes? All of those, little things that take place. It's not just what ends up in your checking account. So that's one. You may be a business owner. You have projects that you're doing on the side. So how all of that income is coming together. The next part, which everybody hates, and I don't even use the word budget, but how are you spending your money, right? What's your expense line item looks like? And these are simple things, they're simple things to work on, but they're not easy. And we have these mindsets about budgeting sort of being all this evil kind of thing. And if I put a budget, I just can't spend anything. So I advocate for that. And one of the things I've done over the years to kind of spice it up for myself and my family, and particularly my husband and I created this idea of us having little mini money dates, because we needed to stay on the top of this topic, right? And we needed to sort of have an idea what was going on. So I think everybody kind of likes dates. And like, if I throw a little couple of questions around finances, then it turned into a money date. But it really let us talk about, where we are with our expenses, right? Like, did we blow it up and we do it every week. Did we blow it up for this week? And some weeks are, better than others because things happen. But it really allowed us to have this kind of freedom of worry, right? Because that's what happens with a lot of people out there, because they're not looking at it. And I'm talking about your spending, expenses. Those are like the basic things. They're not looking at it on a consistent basis. It creates even more worry. It creates more guilt. And it's sort of like this vicious circle that you just keep circling in it and say, I hate budgeting. I hate looking at this. But in reality, if you just looked at it from a different angle, it just opens up a whole other space for you to be in, and really at some point maybe even enjoy it, or at least have an idea. That's all I want everybody to really know what is going on, and not putting your head in the sand instead.
Yes. And I think that that's the piece, right? It does have a negative connotation. You do hear budgeting, and I know probably some people kind of cringe and thought of, maybe I remember growing up, my mom had the envelope system. She had
That's right.
money that was set aside for certain things, and she'd always kind of pull a little bit here and pull a little bit there when there was extra. And I think that many of us now, we don't necessarily use maybe a checkbook where we're balancing everything and know exactly we're using our debit card and it goes in, it goes out, it goes in, it goes out.
That's right.
And half the time we don't know what's going out or coming in. So if I wanted to start with budgeting, what are some of the first things that you would tell me to do to take a look at? Like if I needed to sit down and just figure out a budget, what do I need to figure out first?
I would really break it down and started with like looking at your monthly spend, right? And just list all your, something that I also have done for myself. So all of these things that I'm talking about aren't just what I've learned in textbooks, right? And obviously when I was studying for my license to become a certified financial planner, we didn't have all this technology. And this was only really like 12 years ago. So a lot has changed, but the basic principles are still there. What I have done for myself that really worked to give me this freedom of knowing is I sat down and I listed all of our expenses, and I separated them into two categories. One was to look at everything that is fixed. So all of your bills that are fixed every month, mortgage payments, if you have maybe rent, auto pay, car payments, whatever the fixed bills that are going to happen every month for some time, and figure out what that spend is. And then separate your variable expenses. And variable expenses all depend really, they're personal. For some people, buying groceries is not a variable expense. For others, it is, because you have choices. So if you have a choice as far as spend or not spend, I call it a variable expense. So it's almost like separating it in two categories. And all of a sudden you're going to start seeing what your bottom line really is, and what you really need to bring as far as income. Now, because my family has been on variable income for so long, we had to figure out this bottom line for ourselves to have a base idea of how much money we had to bring in order to pay for our lifestyle. But one thing I also found is that in this fixed expense category, it started to become really more freeing for us not to worry that the bills didn't get paid. And what I did, I separated actually two checking accounts. One pays for these fixed expenses. One is our kind of, spending whenever we want it. But what happened in some months when we didn't have a lot of income, we didn't spend, but we also made sure that our fixed expenses really got covered and they got paid. These days, everything is really on autopilot because we auto pay our bills. And, I don't even have to look at this after the 15th of the month because everything is on autopilot and it's just runs pretty smoothly. But it really gave that separation, gave a lot of clarity and a lot of, peace of mind, and not worrying, oh my gosh, is this bill going to go through? Am I going to have an overdraft on my account? And if families or partners, you have maybe two people tapping into it, right, into one account with two debit cards, hey, that could create even more, commotion in there and anxiety, and sort of like, again, putting your head in the sand and saying, oh, I can't deal with it. And yeah.
Whether you're a seasoned podcaster or just thinking of starting a podcast, you need to listen to Buzzcast from the folks at Buzzsprout. Here we go! Buzzcast covers everything a podcaster should know, from marketing strategies and how to make money from your podcast to the latest and greatest tech and industry insights to keep you on the cutting edge. Follow Buzzcast by clicking the link in the description or go to buzzcast.buzzsprout.com and keep podcasting.
Yes. No, I think that definitely, budgeting can just bring up so many conversations. And I know even with my husband and I, anytime we go to sit down to do it, it's always that kind of like roll the eyes. We got to do this again. But you need to know what's coming in, if you're going to be going out, and then what money you can kind of cover yourself. And I think one of the big things that I have tried to make sure that I do within my business, but also within my family and the income that's coming in from my husband as a teacher, is to always have some sort of profit, right? To make sure that we're planning for the future. And I think for a lot of us, many of us are just avoiding it altogether. So could you give us 3 steps so that we could take now, so that we can actually start planning for our futures, for retirement, or to buy a house, or for whatever it is that we want to use that money for, just kind of some steps that we can put them into action now?
Sure. So I'll use your example of planning for retirement, or planning for some future goals. And that's really one of the first steps in when I start working with the client, in laying down their foundation for creating a financial plan, or what we call a money roadmap. And the first step is to really become clear of what it is that you want. And the way you become clear about it is really identifying those specific goals or specific targets. And retirement being one of them for everybody. It's like such a vague goal, and says, "Oh, I want to retire when I'm 55." A lot of times I hear, "Oh gosh, no, I can't ever retire. I'm going to work until I die." Okay, that's fine too, right? It's really totally up to you. But if you put a specific date around it, so that's kind of where financial goal is different from just a wish, or I kind of want to do that. You have a specific date attached to it. So say, all right. And you may not be 100% certain, or you may not 100% know that that's going to take place, but at least you have something you're going to work towards. So you almost it's like when you're working on a project, you need a deadline for that to happen. Otherwise, it's never going to really come together. So identify that specific deadline. Is it going to be age 60, 65, whatever, however you see yourself, in that phase. And then what also is really crucial is identify how much, and for retirement, for example, and that's kind of where the spending in your basic expenses and lifestyle is really important, at least in our process, is once you know that, then that becomes your goal as well. So let's say your overall lifestyle is maybe $50,000, just a number, right? So your goal becomes, I need to have $50,000 come from somewhere, some income sources, for me at age 65 for the rest of my life. Well, that's a very different goal as opposed to saying I'm going to retire, and just not have a clear picture. So that's an example of just one goal, but you can have a lot of them, right? You can have goals for buying a house, traveling, sending your kids to college, all kinds of things, growing businesses, starting businesses. So that's the first step. And then as I was explaining, kind of the part of it is working it backwards. So now let me use maybe example that's, that we can calculate. For example, if you wanted to buy a house, let's say we have a 3-year timeline. We need, I live in San Francisco Bay Area, so a down payment numbers are kind of crazy here, but
Yep, I'm in California. Yep.
I know. It's like if you want to buy a house, let's say, just to start a home, like, I don't know, $2 million, you need like 20% down payment. But anyway, numbers are just numbers, right? Mm-hmm. You just have to work with them. But let's say you had a $100,000 down payment you had to come up with in the next 3 years. So work it backwards. 3 years from now, we got to have this much money. What are we going to do? A couple of things you can work on, right? You can work on figuring out what your savings abilities are, but how would you know what your savings abilities are if you haven't really looked at what's really coming in as far as income, what's really going out, right? And you may find out that it's really not a whole lot that's left. So now you start to see that, okay, we need to address our income situation, or we need to address our expense situation, right? And so that's one. Can you save for that goal, right? Or can you invest, right? This is more complex layer in terms of, okay, how can I invest my money so that it grows? But for everybody starting out, we all can save and we all can make more income. And I'm a big advocate of that, especially in today's world, like side hustle, side gigs, it's all out there and anybody can do it. And a third step, and it's not just in this process, I think it's anything in life, you've got to commit. Like you've got to commit. If you said you're wanting to do it, and that's the big reason that it doesn't work for most people, is that if you said you have this particular goal in mind, and especially it's around your finances and something that's important for your family, you've got to commit to stay the course, right? And see that through. And I know that, even though I get to do this every day and work with other people, day in and day out, I know how it is for my own personal finances. Life happens. Like you said earlier, you don't want to look at it and just, kind of the heck with it. having those little mini money dates really helps, just to kind of stay on the top of it. If it's at the top of your mind and it's sort of in front of your eyes, you will have a lot more excitement about it versus not addressing it at all.
Yes. And I think that this kind of changes too, it based on what your business is, right? As far as if we're looking at this from a business standpoint of being able to save money and show that we're actually making profit in our businesses, whether we are freelancers, whether we are bloggers working as 1099s, or we're subcontractors, or we're S Corps or LLCs, whatever it is, what would you recommend as far as revenue coming in? I know I already have an idea of my expenses, and I know I'm going to be able to cover my expenses and have extra. Is there a percentage that you would say that like you need to be putting aside for profit to be saving for maybe a future investment, but actually having kind of that almost like nut kind of hidden away that you're saving toward?
And just to clarify, this is if you were looking at the business as a business, I mean, I mean, at least I would shoot for at least 10% of what you bring. And if you can work it higher, I've seen some folks do 20%. But you'll have to kind of see where it's going. I mean, there's creative strategies you can put in place in terms of saving for retirement, right? And kind of, maybe opening a retirement type of account, and that allows you to defer more taxes. So even with that kind of strategy, you may even be able to put more money because it's advantageous for you to not only save, right? That's part of the goal, but it helps you lower the taxes. So I would start at least 10%. Everybody should be looking at something like that. And that's by far, I think, maybe the lower of a percentages. Most people shoot, for higher numbers just because it's necessary.
Right. Yes. No. And I think that it's such a good conversation, especially when you're talking about freelancers that don't necessarily know what's going to come in from month to month based on the projects that they're working on, or based on the brands that they're working with, or revenue wise, as far as ads, what's going to end up coming in. And I think if you can say, I'm going to start it off. And I think that's the first piece for me, is just being able to take that step forward and knowing that I'm saving and putting it aside, is just so helpful. Of course, first knowing my expenses and knowing where my money is actually going, because as freelancers, we often get sucked into, I'm going to pay this subscription, and I need this shiny thing, and I need that shiny course, and all the expenses, that's how our profit gets eaten up. So if we can actually say, like you said, about the difference between variable and fixed, is that what you had said about
exactly
expenses? Yeah. So your fixed expenses that you know that you're going to have every single month, and then those variable expenses that we have shiny object syndrome and we just buy things randomly. I think it's such an issue. So I love that we're really starting to take a step back and say, nope, 10%. We're going to put aside and save it and figure out what we're going to do, whether we're saving for a house, whether we're saving for a car, or figuring out a way to invest it so that you can use it for tax purposes, right? Depending upon what you identify as your business as far as business-wise, LLC, S Corp, whatever it might be.
Yeah. I also like to reshape the thinking of the savings, and it's more like it's one of those bills that you've got to pay first. But the best part of that is that you paying it to yourself. So to work on that first. Everything else is secondary. I mean, think about it, right? Why do you worry about paying your mortgage first when in reality, you've got to pay yourself first? So make a savings is one of those line items of your fixed must pay bills. And that's it. You don't think of it in any other way. And it becomes, it gets into this autopilot category, and it happens for you every time.
Yes. And I know that for some that may be listening, like this may seem like a frustrating conversation, because you're thinking, well, my expenses, and I am still at a point where I'm trying to grow. But you need to hear this and have this conversation now, before the money that actually could have been profit is totally out of your hands and you haven't been setting this aside. I deal with so many clients that are now seeing 6 figures in their businesses, but they have nothing to show for it.
Mm-hmm.
You really want to make sure that you come up with a plan for this. Now, you are running a challenge, Anna. Can you tell us more about that? Because I love challenges. I think that they are so helpful. They give you actionable items to actually move your business forward. So I'd love to know more about it and be able to share it with my audience.
Yeah, totally. And so we are running what's called a 28-day challenge to create your own money roadmap. So we talked quite a bit today about all these different components of what gets put into creating a financial plan or roadmap. I like to call it a roadmap because it opens up a lot more possibilities, and it's really possibilities in your mind of what you can create. Because a plan is like it's more boxed in idea versus a roadmap. And it's like, okay, I can go anywhere I want, right? As long as I have these specific guidelines to follow and steps, like we were talking about, saving for particular goals, having a good idea of your spend. So in the 28 days, what we've done is that we've created an outline to help somebody actually create their own money roadmap, not necessarily having to work with one of our advisors one-on-one, but more of running together side by side. So it's an online training. You get there every day. There is a specific topic that we're discussing. So it's 4 weeks broken down into the weekly themes. First week, for example, we focus a lot on mindset and getting us really crystal clear on the goals, getting our basic foundation down, like where we talked about spending and knowing our income. And then we start to build on with identifying those big goals that we're going to achieve. Like, what are they going to be? Are they going to be, is it to save for retirement? Is it to buy a home, buy a car, start a business, whatever it is, right? So each day you have a module that covers that particular topic. These are really short videos, so you don't need to spend a whole lot of time. That's the whole idea, right? Because what we want from the challenge is for you to gain the momentum. If you start doing something every day, right? Commit to one little thing that you're going to implement at the end of the month, right? In 28 days, you're going to see a whole lot of improvement that you actually didn't even think you can put your hands on. In the third week, we're going to cover what we call protection for all of your finances. And it comes in the form of making sure you have proper insurance coverages, especially for freelancers where all of those programs are kind of hard to reach, right? They're expensive. You don't know where to go for actual resources, but you have to have those, right? And we talk about how much coverage you need, and there are different categories: life insurance, disability, homeowners, renters, all of that, right? Whatever may apply to you, we cover in that week. And then the fourth week, actually, we're going to really start talking about how do you make money on your money, right? Because we can't just work hard. Our money has to start working hard for us. So at some point, not only saving is what we're focusing on, right? We now start to get a little bit more creative and start to talk about investing. But because we've done really the hard work up front in terms of identifying our goals and knowing what we want, that the investing piece becomes much, much easier. And I think that's the big misconception out there, is that I don't know how to invest money, or I don't know what it needs to be. But it's really not that. It's more about what is your timeline and what do you want to do? Investments are they're vehicles. Again, they're like money are tools, right? For you to do whatever it is you want. So we have a whole week discussing all of those different topics. And then I am a new mom, and the topic of teaching kids how to be smart with money is really kind of top of mind. My son is only 8.5 months old, but it's already a worry. Is that how do I make him not make mistakes that I made? That's my my thought. And so we have a whole module that covers topics and kind of conversations that you should have with your kids, not with 8 months old, but you can start when they're just a tiny bit older. But things like, how do you tell them how much money you actually make? Or do you tell them, right? It's a personal choice. Or how do you teach them these basic concepts, right? Some people like the idea of jars, like you have a jar for saving, you have a jar for spending, the jar for giving. So all of that is really important to cover if you have kids. And then one of the other pieces that's also taken place, some folks are closer to retirement, or it's like really, we work with clients on different life stages. So some might be starting out, having families, some might be kind of middle-aged, and some of them are getting closer to retirement. So we have a whole track for retirement kind of related questions. When do you take Social Security, or how do you manage your portfolio if once you start not when you stop working, and how do you create income streams? So all those questions that tend to happen when you are really facing that big decision: do I retire or not? And all of this is accompanied by every day you get a little tutorial video. You have a workbook that you can kind of follow along. And the most important part, and I talked about this already, we like the idea of committing to implementing one thing a day. So that one daily action, because if you don't, it's going to be hard to finish the challenge, because it sort of builds up on each of these days. And then once a week, we actually have live Q&A. So I've done. This is our first month. September is our first month running this challenge. And this is our third week. So every Thursday at 3:00 Pacific, we get online and kind of, run questions and see how people are doing. Because everybody has different experience, right? Where they are, they have different asset level, income level. So when you look at this challenge, it could grab a lot of different, people. And you may, at this point in your life, you may want to just address one topic, and that's great. Work on that. If you have more capacity and time, you can certainly, complete a lot more. But the idea is that you do something every day to kind of move you forward.
I love it. No, anything where it's strategic and gives you step by step, I'm always all for it. So what we're going to do is we're going to link to that in the show notes, that you guys can make sure that you can go check that out, get more information, make sure that you get signed up and in there for that. I just think that money is a conversation that we don't like to have. I think especially as women, we have a tendency to kind of almost dodge it. It's not a conversation that we like to have. And I think it's just so important, especially being female entrepreneurs that are running our businesses, we're providing for our families, then we need to think about our financial future as well. And it not just be about being able to take a vacation with the kids. That's great for short term, but we do need to start thinking long term as well. So Anna, thank you so much for coming on and answering all of my questions. I so appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. Clearly, you really need to start thinking about your finances. Start thinking about how you're going to put together a plan for your future. And one of the great ways to do it is to sign up for that challenge. It'll give you a roadmap for your future as far as your finances. All right, you guys, I appreciate you so much when you take the time to leave us a review on your favorite podcasting app. As you heard in last episode where I talked to Mary Odette White, we talked about the fact that leaving reviews helps other people be able to find it because it shows us as an expert with Google. So if you could please take the time to leave us a review, we would so appreciate it. You can make sure that you leave me your Instagram handle as your name so that I can send you a video as a thank you. All right, guys, until next time, I will see you all then.